How you doing? Good. Good. We are going to have a lovely evening. My name is Rosamond King. I'm the director of the Wolf Institute for the Humanities. So my students in the audience. And we were kind of the umbrella organization that put together the Stonewall celebration here on Brooklyn College's campus. As some of you may know, it's the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. We're going to talk more about that later. But I do think it's important to say that here on Brooklyn College's campus, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, the majority of our events feature people of color and feature trans people. I think I should get a clap for that. You will not see us represented as much. But those are the people who were at the core of Stonewall, and so we thought those are the people who need to be at the core of our celebration. We advertised that we were going to have the fabulous Victoria Cruz, who's going to be introduced momentarily by María R, and Professor Kai Green. Professor Kai Green is extremely ill, so unfortunately he is unable to be with us. And we send him the best wishes, and we're happy that that means we're going to get to talk to Victoria more.
Get ready.
But I do want to set a little bit of context first. So I'm going to show a couple of short videos. The first video that I'm going to show is first, you know this woman is famous. If you didn't know, this woman is famous, and rightly so. And these, I wanted to put these images up because these are from the Vanity Fair article. And look just look how beautiful, right? On the stage and just hanging out in the park. Do you remember when these were?
That's the Gilded Gray.
This one?
Yeah, that's the Gilded Gray.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is Central Park. And Their Eyes.
And this is Central Park. So
and that's the first Pride at Central Park.
The first Pride ever. And so I think part of what we're going to learn about here tonight as well is what Pride started out as opposed to perhaps some of what it has come to be. So the first video that I'm going to show is a little video about Sylvia Rivera. Anybody know who Sylvia Rivera was?
Yes, she's the mother of our movement.
Exactly. And so as part of the context for this, and a lot of what we do as people of color and in some queer communities as well, is kind of speak to the ancestors a little bit before we get started. And so Sylvia Rivera is now an ancestor. I'm going to show this short video.
She put the T in LGBTQIA, yet most people don't know who she is. Long before transgender people broke into mainstream media, there was an iconic trans activist who challenged everything and everyone: society, police officers, even members of her own community. Her name was Sylvia Rivera.
I was born July 2nd, 1951, at 2:30 in the morning in a taxi cab in the old Lincoln Hospital parking lot.
Born to Venezuelan and Puerto Rican parents, Sylvia ended up in the care of her grandmother at the age of 3.
My grandmother used to come home and find me all this stuff. I get my ass whipped. Of course, but we don't do this. You're one of the boys. I want you to be a mechanic. I said, no, but I want to be a hairdresser. And I want to wear these clothes.
But Sylvia would not be discouraged. She walked into the 4th grade wearing makeup at a time when the word transgender didn't even exist.
You got to be who you are.
Unwilling to change who she was, Rivera struck out on her own in 1961 at the age of 10. During this time, the civil rights movement took off along with the peace movement and second-wave feminism. But while all of these movements eventually entered the mainstream, the transgender rights movement remained on the fringe, even within the gay community. Sylvia struggled with homelessness and drug addiction, and like many runaways and queer youth did at the time, she became a sex worker in order to survive.
The first time that I got arrested, I was like, I'm going where? Every time that I used to go in front of the judge, upper head female impersonation.
That was a charge.
Yeah.
Upper head female impersonation.
In 1969, Rivera took part in the Stonewall Riots and claimed to have thrown one of the first bottles. Looking back on that night, Rivera saw the movement as a turning point.
Everything clicked. We're going to go for it.
The riots would inspire the organization of the gay rights movement that soon followed. But despite progress, Sylvia felt that the movement was not inclusive of the trans community, of poor people, or people of color. Sylvia forced her way to the stage in 1973 at a rally honoring patrons of the Stonewall Riots and was booed.
Brooklyn College is no stranger to technical difficulties. Well, I think what we'll do is, we've got about half of the video. If the internet comes back up, then we'll play the rest. But we'll keep going, because the video will always be there. And I'm going to introduce María del Scharrón, who will then introduce Ms. Cruz. And Professor del Scharrón is Interim Associate Dean of the School of Education, as well as a professor in the School of Counseling graduate program. They are a predoctoral Ford Foundation and APA Minority Fellowship Program Fellow. They received their Ph.D. in clinical psychology from the University of Puerto Rico. And after their clinical internship at the Harvard Medical School, they worked as an assistant child psychologist at the Washington Heights Family Health Center, a primary healthcare clinic that served a predominantly Latinx immigrant community in New York City. Thank you. I'll finish my introduction and I'll say the rest of the video. They're an active leader in GLARE. Do the students here know what GLARE is? GLARE is GLBTQ advocacy in research and education. They're a really important LGBTQ organization of faculty staff on campus. They're committed to the development of multicultural competencies in counselors, psychologists, and educators using experiential and affective educational approaches. Their scholarship and advocacy focus on ethnic and cultural minority psychology and education, multicultural competencies, intersectionality, LGBTQ issues, gender variance, spirituality, resilience, and well-being. But before, there's only a minute and a half left. Yeah. And then he came back. Let's see. And there's Marsha P.
She put the T in feminism, but while all of these movements eventually entered the mainstream, the transgender rights movement remained on the fringe, even within the gay community. Sylvia struggled with homelessness and drug addiction, and like many runaways and queer youth did at the time, she became a sex worker in order to survive.
The first time that I got arrested, I was like, I'm going where? Every time that I used to go in front of the judge, upper head female impersonation.
That was a charge.
Yeah.
Upper hand female impersonation.
In 1969, Rivera took part in the Stonewall Riots and claimed to have thrown liquor bottles. Looking back on that night, Rivera saw the movement as a turning point.
Everything clicked. We're going to go for it.
The riots would inspire the organization of the gay rights movement that soon followed. But despite progress, Sylvia felt that the movement was not inclusive of the trans community, of poor people, or people of color. Sylvia forced her way to the stage in 1973 at a rally honoring patrons of the Stonewall Riots and was booed.
Drugs got me go and hide my tail between my legs. I was not put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that.
In 1970, Sylvia and her best friend Marsha P. founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, a shelter and services center for homeless queer youth of color. Sylvia and Marsha used the money they made as sex workers to keep the house running, but eventually the building was sold and STAR never found a new home. Rivera struggled with homelessness and addiction for the rest of her life. She died of cancer in 2002. But her struggles were not in vain. Her fight continues with the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, a nonprofit that works to ensure the self-expression of all people. Her legacy is the modern LGBTQIA movement.
I want to say one more thing about Professor Dean María Scharrón-del Río. I gave you all of the kind of formal things, but people who are faculty here at Brooklyn College have my utmost respect when they are great teachers. And students tell me that Professor María del Scharrón is a great teacher, and they actually won the Distinguished Teacher Award. And so that tells you really where their heart is at. So thank you so much for being here.
very, very generous presentation. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to have the honor to present Victoria Cruz. My role here, in addition to presentation, will be also moderation. And I think at the end, after we hear Victoria speak, when we are talking about some of the more modern aspects of the trans movement, there may be another couple of clips that we show if we have time, but if not, really, the main point is to, hear her, to listen to her, and to just, be with and bear witness, with what she brings. So, Victoria Cruz is an LGBTQ rights activist and a retired counselor for survivors of all forms of violence, with a focus on violence within relationships. Victoria is a trailblazer, a fearless advocate for our community, and a mentor and model for many trans and gender non-conforming people in New York City and across the globe. A contemporary of activists, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, she is featured in the 2017 documentary The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. A veteran of the Stonewall Riots that launched the modern LGBTQ civil rights movement, Victoria has been honored in many ways for her contributions to LGBTQ communities and with her anti-violence work, including receiving a prestigious National Crime Victims Award from Attorney General Eric Holder in 2012, as the first trans woman of color to be honored with this award. To program development, direct services, training, and education, Victoria dedicated her career to promoting social justice and equality for all, especially lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ, and HIV-affected survivors of intimate partner violence and youth. As the senior domestic violence counselor advocate at New York City Anti-Violence Project, Victoria developed and conducted numerous trainings for service providers and community members, including co-authoring a landmark training on bias in service provision. Victoria co-created the only gender-inclusive support group for LGBTQ survivors of IPV in New York State, and has served on panels at many conferences focusing on violence within and against LGBTQ and HIV-affected communities. In all her work, Victoria has worked to make the invisible visible, amplifying the voices of queer and trans people of color, building safety and community with them. Vicky has been honored by many organizations and public officials, most recently by the Gay and Lesbian Independent Democrats. Vicky was the Maiden of Honor at the inauguration of City Council Speaker Christine Quinn, and she's a graduate of the Citizen Academy and New York City Police Academy, has a cosmetology and hairdressing license in New York State, and received her BA from Brooklyn College in Theater and Fine Art. So let's welcome back, let's move on, distinguished
everybody, how are you today? Okay, you want to know about me? First of all, I identify as Boricua.
Yes.
I come from the island of Puerto Rico, or Boricua. Next to my island, there is Quisqueya, which now is known as Santo Domingo and Haiti. Cuba will always be Cuba. But I identified as Boricua because when I saw Agent Orange throw paper towels at the people in my country after a hurricane of 4 and 5 category, I felt insulted. So I let him know that we are still here and we're very proud. And we're not asking for charity. We're asking as American citizens to be treated as such and not be treated that way by him or anybody else. So I am Boricua. I'm also one of 11 children. Third from the top. I helped raise my family. I came to Brooklyn College because I knew this body wasn't lasting me that long. And I love my own cooking. After a series of events and things that happened to me, I went into the welfare program after being a crack addict for about 8 years. I couldn't find a job. Nobody would hire me, even having a license as a hairdresser, but they didn't want trans people around. So I wanted to hurt the people who hurt me. But I wanted to do it the correct way and the legal way. That's when I went to the Anti-Violence Project, and they supported me throughout the whole year that my trial went on. And I wanted to give back by giving back and volunteering for that program or that agency. They saw what I could do, and they liked the way I worked as a volunteer, and they hired me as an assistant. As an assistant for upfront answering desks. I didn't know anything about faxes or things like that, but I learned, and I learned real quick, and I do multitask. I then worked my way up to where I became senior domestic violence counselor. I first was the coordinator of domestic violence program. And I owed my education to Brooklyn College. That's why when they asked me to come and present at this particular event, especially the Stonewall 50, I said, why not? That's where I got my training at. Like I said, I don't know, I no longer look that way. Is there any questions you would like to ask me about that time? Stonewall. Go ahead.
You addressed what happened that night on June 28th when we raided the place, and you said you were there. I'd like to hear
What happened was, my partner at the time, here I got some pictures. You can all hear me now. This particular gentleman here was my partner, and he was a bouncer at the Stonewall Inn. And he didn't come home Thursday night. So I went and stalked him. I was outside there, and he finally came in. He wanted me to go home. I said, no, you're going home with me tonight once you finish work. Okay, at about 12:30, I saw Sylvia. She was by Sheridan Square Park with a group of people. Whatever was going on inside was going inside. I didn't know what happened. I know that when I first saw the police come with some of the paddy wagon and they went inside, I heard some commotions inside. Now, I know a bartender that was there, his name is Tree. He works at the Stonewall now, too.
still there.
He's a treasure trove of Stonewall history, too, and pictures. This particular dog here was the dog that guarded the liquor at the Stonewall in the basement at Stonewall. Because once the cops came in, if that's not done, I'm not here. So, what was happening inside, there was a commotion inside. Because the cops came in. Usually when they come in, the lights would go on and everybody would go and find a partner.
That's a warning.
The warning, yeah. They would find a partner. If there were some girls there, guys would go around girls. Usually police came in and they looked up and down at you and they wanted to see if you had 3 articles of clothing that pretended to your birth gender. So that means if you were a guy, you had to have a man's shirt, pants, or shoes. Girls, especially lesbian girls at that time, dungarees was into fashion, so were t-shirts, so the girls would roll up the cigarettes and roll it up here, and wear sandals. So one thing they used to do was go around their back, feel their back to see if they had bras on. Some girls were, strapped down. And what they did was, what we called was Robin Hood. That means pull the strap of the bra and let it go, just to hurt.
That's what they used to do.
That's, I think, one of the reasons lesbians started burning their bras, because we're in this movement. So then, I know there was a commotion inside, because we heard the commotion inside. By that time, people started crowding around Sheridan Square Park. A lot of people started crowding. I remember that night clearly because it was so calm and hot, and Judy Garland had just been buried.
Right.
So, everybody was kind of sad. It wasn't upbeat. It wasn't like a jovial time. It was very, very, the feeling was dense, like the calm before the storm. First came out to the paddy wagon was Miss Majors.
Oh.
Remember Miss Majors?
Yes.
Miss Majors, she had the blonde wig and long white dress. She got pushed into the wagon. Then a lesbian was pushed and hit by a car. That's when the first brick started. It wasn't a shoe, it was a brick that broke the Stonewall window. This particular window. The brick broke the window, not the shoe. After that, all hell broke loose. Then there was bottles thrown, there was fire thrown, and the cops were asking for backup. But unfortunately, the 6th precinct was getting their brown bags every Friday night.
All the money.
Brown bags was, they came in, they picked up their little payoff, and they left us alone. So they didn't come for backup with the sergeant who came in with the raid. So they had to wait a while. By that time, it got even bigger. More people started coming in. Finally, they got backup, and people started to, the police started, hitting them with nightsticks and whatever. And we started, just marching away from Stonewall, or running away from Stonewall. But the way the village is situated, we went up 7th Avenue, down 10th Street, down Waverly, and back to Christmas. So actually, we were behind the cops that were chasing us. It was like those, what do you call those? It was comedy. It was the way it was funny, but at the same time, some cars were being put on fire. The riots lasted for 3 days. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And some people were arrested. Frankie was from Canada. Once he saw that fire started erupting, he says, let's get home. I don't want to get arrested. I'll get deported. Immigrants during that time were deported. As you see this picture with me and Sylvia, this was in 1998, the Louima case. That was about 21 years ago. And this sign says, stop, police violence against immigrants. Nothing has changed. Now we have the government locking up children in cages, taken away from their parents. Nothing has really changed. If anything, it's gotten worse with the climate in the White House. After that, Frankie brought the dog here, and this sign, because the bar was really torn up. During that time, scotch was $1, rye was $1, bourbon was $1, champagne $1.25, soft drinks, you can't even buy a drink with all these if you add them up together. And the word transgender did not exist. The word transgender did not exist till 1993. Before it was femme queen, butch queen, transvestite, drag queen, but transgender did not exist. That's why when Star came about, they said street transvestites, which is not a really, it's kind of derogatory name.
Yeah.
And then Marsha, she would always be by Washington Square Park, the northeast corner, right by the Waverly Hotel, and she would, make ends meet with selling, those slugs, because at the time the subways were 35 cents, and she would sell slugs, $5 a bag of big slugs, and that's how she'd make a living. Besides, she would get a public assistance check on Friday. By Monday, she was broke. Where did all that money go to? The street people, young people, gay people who needed something. She'd give you the shirt off her back if she could. And she wasn't afraid to get dressed up in drag and go, and the cops would try to arrest her. As a matter of fact, she was arrested quite a few times for prostitution. But that's how she supported herself. She once went to a cattle call. Who knows what a cattle call? Okay, she once went to a cattle call. She put on a blue taffeta dress and sneakers and a blonde Marilyn Monroe wig. And her makeup wasn't really that properly done. So she went to the cattle call, and they said, no, we can't use you right now. We're looking for something different. Once she got out of that cattle call, she was in the street. Who she run into? Andy Warhol. She became an Andy Warhol model, and you see pictures of her paintings of her by Andy Warhol. She got her break, yeah. You saw this particular picture in the Clifford store. This is how she used to dress up she dressed in drag. She was fabulous, but most of all, she was really, really generous and did not give a damn. The P is for pay it no mind. She got her last name Johnson because on 6th Street and 8th Avenue, there was a Howard Johnson's there. You remember Howard Johnson?
Yeah.
You do? And then there was Mama's Chicken Ribs.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And there was Mama's Chicken Ribs right by on Greenwich. Remember? Mama was a little old lady who had a restaurant. And if she saw that you had too much French fries in your burger, take it off and put it back in the kitchen. She was a character. So, I wasn't too friendly with Sylvia because she was outspoken and in your face. So, I wasn't too friendly with her, but we lost time because if we would have made friends, I think this movement would have gone a little bit faster. After the incident happened to me in the nursing home, I was sexually assaulted there. And I asked for help from the community, and Sylvia was one of the people who helped me. We went to a meeting, and it's in the movie, and she stood up. She said, I know you. And I said, I know you too. And I stood up also because I didn't know what was going to happen. And this particular button was on her left side. It just popped. And it rolled to my feet. Now, I didn't want to get up because I didn't want to be at a disadvantage. So the sister came, picked it up, and went to give it to her. She says, no, give it to her. She's one of us. From that day forward, Sylvia and I were like two peas in a pod. She was very helpful. She also helped me a lot, place a lot of transgender women, especially youth, in the shelter at Sylvia's place. When Sylvia's place wasn't there, we went to Tranny House, which was Rusty and Chelsea, who had Tranny House in Brooklyn on 16th Street. I would call them at the 11th hour because always somebody came at the 11th hour. Just about 10 minutes before we closed the Anti-Violence Project, they had no place to go. I didn't have the heart to send them back into the street, so I would call Tranny House and say, would you allow another girl in? And that place was packed. And they never said no. I remember that when Sylvia was in her deathbed at St. Vincent's Hospital, I used to go and feed her. And that particular day, before she died, she said, Victoria, come here. She always called me Vicky, but when she said Victoria, I knew she meant business. She said, sit down. She says, I want you to try to keep the community together. I said, why are you telling me this? He says, because we can be our own worst enemy. Within our own community, we can be our own worst enemy. And it's true. Trans bickering against trans because they're prettier, they're younger, they're this, they're that, they got the sex thing, they don't have the sex thing, they do sex this. Gay men not liking trans women, lesbian competing with trans girls, We can be our own worst enemy, and there is power in numbers if we stick together. Also, she said they would try to have words coming up to split us, divide us. I said, well, what kind of words? She says, they'll come up. And today we have like this new particular word that cisgender man, cisgender woman. Well, to me, this cis sounds like a rattlesnake getting ready to strike, or sissy. You understand? These are words that will split our community. We have a whole alphabet. LGBTQ, Two-Spirit, as long as we keep it short and intact and we're together, backing each other up. There is power in our community, and we have allies out there. Allies that will support us in whatever we tend to do with our own. But transgender rights are only basic human rights. All of us need that rights. We need to strive for this rights. Now we have somebody in the White House who is against trans women, trans men in our armed forces. This is a draft dodger. He claimed 5 times he had heel spurs, and that's why he didn't go to Vietnam. Well, I'm going to channel Marsha, because this is one thing Marsha would say. Honey. Well, what kind of heels was he wearing? Because I know that he likes to get spanked and peed on. So I think it must be spikes instead of pumps. Now that's what she would say today if she was alive. But anyway, I made Sylvia a promise that I would try to keep the community together. And by being here, I am trying. And every place I go, I tell the story that I made a promise to a friend that I would try to keep the community together because there is power in numbers. Now, if I missed anything, this is Marsha in boys' clothes. This is Marsha in drag, full drag. This is me in the first Pride at Central Park, because during that time, the first Pride was not coming down Fifth Avenue. The first Pride was going, we met
That was
at
1970?
1970, we met on Bleecker Street, and then we walked up 6th Avenue, and they gave us half the street, and we walked up, but they wanted the trans community to be last. I said, no, the trans community is not going to be last, so we blended in with all the groups that were marching at that time. Why should we be last? At the same time, another way that we have to fight for was with the LGBT Center. Back in 2000, the LGBT Center was getting renovated, and they didn't want to put the T in their name, so we closed the street down. And the LGBT Center got the LGBT. Still we're last, but we're there. Anyway, I consider myself queer, because I don't look like everybody here, and I don't have a uniform like the army or anything. So I consider myself queer. I didn't want to be put in a box. If I'm going to be put in a box, let me be in a box that I can just be free and be myself. And I know that when I'm going to love somebody, I'm going to love them for them, and I want them to love them for me. So if you have any questions that I may be able to answer you, we can have that dialogue, because I'm not going to say questions and answer, because the answer you might get may not be the one you're expecting, or maybe not be the one you like, but as long as there's dialogue, there's always communication. So if you want to, shoot. Yes.
I have one for you. Hi, Victoria. Good
Hi,
to see you.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good, thank you. I was wondering, when I was listening to you talk about Stonewall and the riot, I was wondering if you ever thought about, like, why that night? It's not like this hadn't happened before. Why do you think the riots happened that night?
Like I said, Judy Garland had just been buried. There was people getting tired. There was that movement, also the Black movement, the women's movement. All we needed was like the queer movement to start. And where people were getting tired of gay bars being raided. And you know, you better have, just like Sylvia says, oh, female impersonation headlines, you know. If you were caught in drags, you were taken into jail. Even though the case was dropped the following day, the judge would dismiss the case and all. But that particular night, I think that because of Judy Garland's death and the atmosphere was hot. It was really hot, but very quiet. And it was a full moon. So, full moon act, some people crave. So I think people had enough of it already. They had enough. And the ones that came in were not the regular precinct from the 6th precinct. And by the way, not all cops were bad at the time. We had a cop, his name was Charlie. He would walk down Christopher Street, up down Christopher Street. And at the end of the night, if somebody had no money to get into the subway or go home, he would give them the 35 cents. But at the other side of the corner was Frank, who had a nightstick, and if you walked by him, he didn't like you, he just whacked you down. So not all cops were bad at that particular time.
Thank you.
So the full moon, yes.
I had heard that there was a group of LGBT people who were waiting for an event like the Stonewall to happen so that they could have an uprising.
Okay, there was some uprisings before Stonewall in San Francisco, the Black Cat.
Yes.
And then in May 11th was the Sippin'. The Sippin' was in Julius Bar, right on 10th Street and Waverly, where journalists, outright J journalists, went in there and asked for a drink. Because before, if you gave a drink to a non-homosexual, you would get arrested with that particular person. You weren't allowed to give a drink to a homosexual. So the sipping was at Julius Bar. They had to go into the bar through the back way. And then Randy Rickle was one of the persons who was the journalist and went in there. They have pictures of them in the particular bar. And they said, we're non-homosexuals and we want a drink. And they got served a drink. So that was one of the first things that started like the movement, you know, step by step. Black Hat, the sipping, and Stonewall. I think people were ready at that time. Anybody else? Come on, there's a lot of questions out there. Yes.
Thank you for coming, by the way.
Thank you.
I want to know like your opinion on like what Pride has become and like the progression of Pride over the years and how you feel about like the current climate of Pride.
Okay, well, Pride, just like Woodstock and any other event that was celebrated before, had become too commercialized. I can't afford $100 to go watch somebody lip sync on a stage at the pier. Woodstock was in Tompkins Square Park. All the drag queens would get dressed up with their wigs and whatnot and carry on. And it was free, and it was a very joyful event. But the place got regentified, and they moved it to the piers. And then the piers were really dilapidated. So, but people enjoy themselves at Woodstock during that time. And now it's become too commercialized. As far as Pride is concerned, a lot of these agencies, a lot of these banks, a lot of these sponsors, too commercialized. I remember one time when Amanda Milan was slashed, his throat was slashed over at 42nd Street, pure daylight. Trans people says, well, why don't we put something about what happened to our sister there? And they didn't care, so what we did was we put lipstick on our arm, like if our throat was slashed, and we marched throughout the parade. The first Pride, we weren't allowed to march in the front. We had to go to the back. The first 3 Prides, we were going to the back. We said, hell no. We were the first runners here, and we're going to present ourselves throughout the whole entire parade. And then one thing I thought about was like, okay, we're in Central Park, it's Midtown Manhattan, you know, uppity people. Why did they want to bring it back down into the Village? Not knowing that the mob wanted to make some money. So they took us out of Central Park, brought the parade down to the Village, and not, you know, not where the fancy people were, but down to the Village where all these homosexuals could enjoy themselves, but the mob also would make money That's where Randy Wicker, and that's why Marsha P. Johnson at the time was worried for her life because he was causing problems with the mob, threatening to do something. Because when you pick on somebody's pockets, it hurts more than if you hurt them. Don't forget, when you went to a bar during that time, you paid to go inside, and there was always somebody outside with a roll of toilet paper. The reason they were outside with a roll of toilet paper because there was no toilet paper inside the bathroom. So if women had to go and pee, they had to pay $1 for 5 sheets of toilet paper. You know how many sheets of toilet paper are in a row? A lot of money. So it was hurting their pockets. So Randy went and started this movement, Take Back the Day, which would be the money that's collected throughout Pride or during the whole event would go into the community. But it was taking money out of the bomb. That's why we think that Marsha was murdered either by the cops or the mob.
So is that case closed for good?
That case was closed.
Will that ever reopen again? Because it hasn't been solved.
In the movie ended. How many have seen the movie? Okay, so you know we need to all see that movie.
Yeah, like tonight.
It tells us our history. It tells us how the movement started. We see Sylvia talking when she was booed in Washington Square Park. She was booed off the stage. She went home and cut her wrist. She had 60 stitches. The one who found her was Marsha, took her to the hospital. She lived, but she cut her wrist. She thought the movement let her down. What was I saying?
The Marsha case.
The Marsha case.
Will it ever reopen? No, it hasn't been solved.
It was closed back in October 2 years ago after Comey was booted out by Agent Orange. So, and we called the FBI, because I took the whole case to the FBI, because obviously we weren't giving any help from the police department. The coroners weren't helpful at all. In the movies you see, the coroners said, when we asked for the report, the autopsy report, I said, this is all I could dig up. It was the only case in 1992 that was missing. And all we got from that particular case was just the front page, not the back. But they couldn't erase the part on the front page that says possible homicide. It was circled in red. So something fishy went on there, definitely. We also went to Canada to look at one of the mob guys, Scharrón. And when we went, we found his apartment. And when we went to his apartment, knocked on the door, they said he had died 2 years before from mysterious circumstances. Who knows? But it's 25 years since then. A lot has changed and nothing has changed.
I'm for
Go ahead.
But I'm also trans as well, as Vicky.
No.
So the only case that I really know of that with the police arrested someone, there's a lot of trans people being murdered. It's been going on for years and years. So how come the only case that I really know of that has been actually dealt with was the Islam Nettles case? How come there haven't been any more police intervention as far as all trans people getting murdered?
Well, that case was closed. You were there in the court.
Right. I'm talking about other cases. A lot of people trans being murdered, getting killed. How come the police aren't doing anything about these murders?
It's not that they're not doing anything, but it's hard. Let's say, for instance, I pick up somebody in the streets, I take them home with me. Unless there's DNA evidence, fingerprints, or something like that. You understand? Like, where they're gonna look. Sometimes they just shove it over, but they don't want to do all that paperwork. Unless the case is really still hot, then they'll go after it. And don't forget, some of the girls do kind of shady things too with their jobs. Yes.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about whether things have changed or they're the same in terms of relationships between different parts of the queer community, trans people, lesbians, gay men, back then and now. Do you see any evolution, or does it seem the same to you?
In some way, there's been some change and some more acceptance, especially in the media or on TV. But the more visible we are, the more haters tend to pick us out, and the more violent the crimes become. As far as sensitivity, I got a call the other day to do a shoot, and they asked me if I had pictures of me in drag and everything else. Now, mind you, this is a person in the family, a lesbian. But she might have been caught up in the moment, and she said, oh yes, and by the way, if you have any pictures when you were a man, I would like them. Oh. So I said, excuse me, what did you say? And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I said, no, this interview is over. I was never a man, I never felt like a man, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. So this interview is over, and I didn't give her the interview. Oh. You understand? But then she called me back apologizing. Oh my God, for 3 weeks she called me. And says, listen, let me tell you something. I forgive you because forgiveness is freedom and power. Because if I harbor that feeling that she did to me and hurt me by saying that, I'll carry it. I don't want that in me. So it's freedom. Forgiveness is freedom and power. Because now when she sees me, she's going to respect me more. All we ask for is a little bit of respect. A little bit of respect. And especially from our own community, when it comes to it, hurts even more. You should know better than just speak to me like that. Or anybody. That's what this sounds like a snake. They're dividing us. Let's face it. New words are coming up. Sylvia told me in her deathbed. New words will come up to divide the community more. You divide, you conquer. But there's power in numbers, and definitely we have allies. Definitely have allies.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your experience in relation to, being Puerto Rican and also, being trans. I identify also as, queer and genderqueer, right? And for Puerto Ricans, gender is a very polarized.
Yeah, the machismo has, like I said, I come from 11 children and third from the top. I felt my parents knew it from the beginning. I was very feminine. I should have brought my boy picture. Should have brought it with me. But I was very feminine. You understand? I was never in a closet, maybe a gilded armoire. Never in a closet. A gilded armoire, big old French closets with ornate, gold leafing and all that stuff. But I felt, one conversation that I had with my father, I had the money for the surgery, and my father came over to me. And we sat down. He says, negra, ven aquí. He called me negra. That was the term of endearment for him. And he asked me, what was I going to do that for? That he loved me the way I was. That for me was enough. My mother was my best friend. She was my dressmaker. So they knew. Okay, some brothers were machismo and, the faggot here, faggot there. Faggots stopped when I started beating them up. Because I grew bigger and I knew how they were going to fight me. So the faggots stopped when I started, fighting back at them. But at the same time, I have very close-knit family. And my mother was my best friend, and my father would just love me the way I was. And, I could understand that the machismo attitude within the Latin countries is we're looked upon, we look down upon. But if you really have love for your child, that's what matters. He'll always be your child, no matter what. And that love between mother and father will always be there, except some people just, the neighbors. You understand? No. Be free, be yourself, respect yourself. Be yourself. That's the best gift you can give to yourself. Be yourself and respect yourself and others. Anything else? Yes.
If you could say something to the trans youth out there who may be in a dangerous home situation where they may be like in danger if they come out of the closet, what would you say to them?
That there are services out there that will help them. There are services out there that they no longer have to maybe prostitute themselves and put themselves in the danger of the virus. That there are services out there who will treat them like human beings. And always be true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, then, let's face it. You've got to be true to yourself to be happy in life. That's what I would tell them. Be true to yourself, but be the good guy.
Can you speak about some of the girls that you actually knew back then who are no longer with us? That,
Oh my
were
God.
close to you, even some of the ones that lived around here?
Well, you knew Joanne.
Joanne, right.
And Linda's still alive.
Okay.
There was Michelle, gorgeous. I should have wrote that magazine, but it's X-rated. Some of them. I used to be, remember Play-Dohs? I'm not bringing you out. I'm not outing you or anything. You remember Play-Dohs. Play-Dohs was a club, a gentleman's club on 34th Street.
14th?
No, Play-Doh was on 34th
Yeah.
Street
Oh.
and 11th Avenue. Well, I used to be a scene starter there. And some of the girls would go and, work the area, scene starters. Couples would come in, but they'd be shy. And, okay, go, start something with them. And once they got into it, it was a sex club. How about Hellfire?
Oh, that was down by 14th Street.
Any more questions? Yes.
How do you feel about trans representation in the media?
Trans representation in the media. The only thing that I think about now of trans representation was transparency, which is closest to what's real life. As far as RuPaul, and that's all a show. It's all a show.
What about Pose?
I haven't seen
Pose is fabulous. If anyone hasn't seen Pose, that is talk about the ball scene, and it's a takeoff from Paris is Burning.
Oh, it's a takeoff from Paris is
Yeah.
Burning. I haven't seen
So
Come
you
Back
have
to
to see,
That
season 2 starts June 10th.
Okay, so it's realistic.
Yes.
Down to
It talks
Paris.
about the transgender movement, and it also connects Paris, the movie Paris is Burning, and what the ball scene was like in the 80s.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I walked one ball. Yeah, I walked
Just
one
one?
ball. I only walked one ball, and it was by accident. I had to
How did you do that by accident?
I got a 9, but and that movie, when Paris is Burning came out, the producers of Pose decided to piggyback off that movie.
Mhm.
And I actually saw the first season. It's on. If you have to get it, it's on FX. It's on a cable channel. But season 2 has been announced and it's coming out June 10th. So if anyone wants to know about the trans movement, you have to see that. It also doesn't talk about the trans movement. It talks about the gay scene. A lot of the butch queens would go out there. They would get on. They had butch queen categories. They had femme queen categories. They had trans queen. They had face category. All this different categories.
Body,
Everything, right?
hair.
So if you want to learn about the trans movement, Pose is the movie, the series to watch.
So yeah, I think the media in some ways beneficial, in some ways detrimental to us.
Right.
It all depends on how it's presented. If it's in good taste, people will pick up on it and have empathy on what's happening with the trans community. But if it's not, it's just a show, clown show, makeup. Who gets dressed like that to go to the street except for me and feathers?
Have you heard of like the music award show for trans people called Transgenders?
Transgenders, no.
No, transgenders.
But I want to bring this up also.
Yeah.
Fashion and music had a lot to do with the outing of the trans community because, or punk rock or goth, it dictates what people wear, how people are seen. Before punk rock or goth, guys would put nail polish on their hands, on their nails, no eye makeup. The hair was totally different, you know, either crew cut, army cut, or whatever. What saved us was music with the Beatles, Grace Jones, Sylvester, David Bowie, all those guys, they tried to change the style of clothing and point of view of how you want to identify and how you want to express yourself. So fashion and music have a lot to do with it. I'm coming out.
Did you want to hear the rest of that?
Yes. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, the show is like, there's been some controversy about it because of the fact that it's called Trenders, which is like a term that's been used against trans people to say like they're faking it because it's trendy now.
So the show doesn't feature trans people?
It does feature trans people, but like there's been, yeah, because it's like reclaiming a word, but people don't think it should be reclaimed or whatever.
Transgender?
Transgender.
Transgender. Oh, transgender. But you know what? A lot of gays, a lot of millenniums, or some millenniums get dressed up in drag just because it freaks them out. Well, it just freaks them out. Whatever turns you on, honey. If the spirit of turns you on. Before if you put on fishnet stockings and a mini skirt with leather and put on makeup and went, you know, bang bang out in the street, you knew that was a working girl. But once punk rock or goth started coming in, you didn't know what that was there. You had to ask. And some don't tell. Before you gotta be honest with yourself and honest with the person next to you too. Still plenty of time. Yes.
Well, in the current political climate that we're in, where there is a lot of divisiveness, you said, and I agree, about bringing the community together. How do we do that?
By having events such as this. In a college where probably her and I were the only trans people there. You have trans people here. We didn't have a queer club then. We have one now. Forums like this to educate one another, to bring up issues that's happening within the community and outside the community, to speak about what's happening, what's really happening. That's how we can change the future. Like I said, there's power in numbers, and we definitely have allies. Joe Biden's one of them. Yes.
With the election coming up next year, do you have a positive outlook? Do you think that we can come back from what we've had to deal with for the past couple of years, or do you see it going in a different direction?
Well, I think there's too many people running, and they're gonna start bickering with one another, and the Democratic Party is just actually looking for trouble, because they're gonna stop bickering between one another, and they're gonna give a chance to Agent Orange to keep on lying to us. And No, to keep on lying to us. Now he wants to give us the Affordable Care Act. Oh, we're going to change it. All of a sudden, oh, after the elections, we're going to change it. He hasn't got a pot to piss on. You understand? With that Affordable Care Act. That's why he's not having anything presented to us. Because if he did, it would make out good for his re-election. But after the election, yeah, you lied to us enough times already.
The title of the activity, or the event that we had today, right, is trans activism, Stonewall, before, during, and after. And you mentioned before in your words, that there's some things that we're still fighting about that remain the same. I wonder if you could, talk a little bit more about what you think are the issues now, how there may be some that are still very similar to the things that were fighting back then, and what are some of the things that may be newer?
There's so much going on in this particular country now also. This picture was taken back in 1998. And it says here, police violence against immigrant. The violence against immigrant we have right now is outrageous. Some of them are not proven, some of them are lies. Also, church burnings. God forbid. 3 church burnings in less than 2 weeks' time. The Ku Klux Klan showing white supremacists showing their faces down outright and in your face. In your face. And then him having to say that there were good people in both sides. Honey, if you're a white supremacist and you're a Nazi or whatever, how good could you be thinking that way? So they're not good people on both sides. Because if I know that you're bad, I'm not going to go and sit by you. So how could they be bad? How could they be good? You understand? So the climate hasn't changed a bit or a lot. It's still the same thing going on. Yes, Black lives do matter. 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He landed in the Caribbean. The first genocide in this hemisphere. And it's still going. And that's not mentioning our brothers and sisters brought over enslaved for 400 years. Black lives do matter. And the genocide still keeps going. The taking of the land of our native people with lies, forked tongue, treaties that weren't meant to be kept. Now he wants to take us away from NAFTA, I think it is, or the European the alliance. No, it's still going on. Nothing has changed, but we can change it because there is power in numbers. If we all unite, and if we all stick to what the goal is, and that's liberty and justice for all. Yes. I got lashes on, so I can't.
And I go to a trans group in Manhattan that's called SAGE, the Senior Center for Older Trans People, Gay, LGBT. And at one of the trans meetings we had one last night, but I think about a couple months ago, what is her name? Tanya. She's a moderator. She's saying that trans people, Donald Trump is trying to erase trans people going into the bathroom, no matter whether you have the operation or not. If you go down certain states down in the South, if you go in there, you're going to get arrested or what have you. This is things I've been hearing. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? I mean, can that actually come to light?
Well, it all depends on, it may come to light. It depends on the state, individual cities too. I know that in Brooklyn College, I was coming here for 2 years and changing into, I took dance classes, so I would change into women's locker room, because I look like that, okay? There was no problem. For 2 years I've been doing it, until a jock, those bossy on, macho man, until he caught interest in me, and I didn't want to be bothered with him because I knew he was an abuser. He had already abused one of the girls here. And the dean found out about it. The dean called me into his office, and he says, I hear you've been using the ladies' room. I says, yes, I have been for 2 years now. I take a shower there, I get dressed there, none of the girls seem to mind. She says, I see your name. I didn't change my name back then. I says, I see your name is Victor Cruz. He says, yes, but I'm planning to change it. He says, well, what would happen if I asked you to get dressed into the men's locker room? I says, I don't mind getting dressed in the men's locker room. I would love it if you take responsibility of whatever happens to me.
Right.
He thought. He says, okay, you can keep using it. When I look like that, what would I be doing in the men's room, locker room? You know, so it all depends how you conduct yourself in the bathroom. If it's there to do your business, you go do your business. But you always got these people who look at you or suspect something of you and want to do something about it because of their own insecurities. That might be the answer if that happens, you know, down south. It all depends on the state.
Yeah.
And it all depends on education too. Let me hear it. No questions is a stupid question. The stupid question is not asked. Yes.
Could you talk about the significance of what you're wearing?
I said it, I identify with the Taino culture of Borinque. So tengo el moño parado. Yeah. These feathers were given to me from a friend. A friend gave them to me, but I always use these feathers. Ever since I saw him throwing paper towels at my Borinque, I said, oh, honey, child, you're the immigrant here.
What do you call these feathers?
What?
Okay, what should we call them?
You mean the hairdo?
The hairdo.
Oh, fuck you, Trump. You know, people ask me, what kind of hairdo? I said, fuck you, Trump.
Can you speak about the years you had when you were going to school here? Because I actually met you in the library.
Right.
I used to work here, by the way. I worked here for 22 years. I got a pension here. But I met you in the library. So, you know, can you talk about when you were taking some of the classes here, how you were perceived by some of the professors? I mean,
I always made it my business. No, I always made it my business to go to the first class early and explain to the teacher.
Why would you ever do that?
Why not? Because he was going to call out Victor Cruz, and I'm going to answer when I look like that.
Right.
So I'd rather let him know, let them know, which at the long run, what happened was they made me change my name. I went to legal aid and said, look, I want my name because it's going to make my life easier.
Right.
They said, yes, okay, and they changed it for free.
But you spoke about Professor, I don't know if he's still here, Professor Leiter.
Professor Leiter, as a matter of fact, I used to do his mother's hair.
Is he still here?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I know, I don't think so.
Oh, he
He
retired.
retired. Yeah, I used to do his mother's hair in Georgetown.
Okay. Oh.
I used to do his mother's hair. He only found out after the play Hal Baltimore that I did costume designing, and she came to the play and saw it. And I had told her, I said, so when my son's acting, I said, yeah. And she came and then she introduced me to him. He says, I didn't know you knew my mother. But he became a very nice person after that. I wouldn't mess up his mother's hair. She was nice. She was very nice.
But you had him as a professor though, right? You had him in a couple of classes, right?
I had a couple of classes with him. I had the stage, no, it wasn't stage design, it was
I had him in theater arts.
Yeah, it was a theater class I had with him acting. I got an A in all my acting classes. I'm acting now. It's strange how you know, life plays itself. I studied theater because I thought I was gonna do something in my beautiful age, because we were young and then became pretty. And I wound up being a social worker. And after I retired, then I started making movies and performing. Yes.
Do you have any people that you would label as people to watch as far as progressing the LGBTQ movement?
I think agencies to watch. One person to watch, Biden. He's an ally. Cory Booker's also an ally. And let's see. Gillibrand? I don't know, but I know that de Blasio is definitely an ally.
He's not running those.
No, he's not running for president, but in here, there, you know. And we have sisters and brothers that are still in the closet. They're not openly out there. Why? It's they choose to. You understand? But I know that they're in the movement. If you got your gator off, you pick it up. What you all laughing? If you got your gator, you pick it up.
And how do you feel about they, them pronouns and the reclaiming of the word queer?
Like I said, queer during my days in school was a fighting word. I need you at 3 o'clock outside. Okay? The word gay meant a very jovial and happy person. A fag was a cigarette. So words evolve and have different meanings. I accept myself as queer. When you know, you call me queer, you're not fine. You're fine. No matter what, you call me queer. But change words evolve and people claim it as something positive, not negative. And they, them, it's only mixed up. It mixes me up. You're either lesbian or not. If you identified as who you identified, I respect that. But if they want me to call them they or them, that's okay with me. It's what you want. And I should respect your feelings.
Are there any trans people in like movies and TV and music that you think are like positive role models for the community, or the inverse of that, like negative role models?
Well, I know that Laverne Cox, yes, Laverne Cox.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Well, you know what? No, I totally respect Caitlyn because it took a lot of chutzpah to do what she did before she transitioned and then come out as being her. You understand? Because it might have been really, really hard to live that double life. It's really hard. You weren't yourself. You weren't living. Now she's living. I can see her not being representative of me because she hasn't lived my life. She hasn't worked the streets. She hasn't had to work as hard as I did. Everything, she had money to do what she wanted to. I'm still plucking hairs out of my face. You understand? Because electrolysis costs a lot. So, well, that hurts.
Janet Mock is another one.
Janet Mock, yes. Janet Mock.
She's a post-op transsexual who actually is the producer of Pose.
Mm-hmm.
And she produced that show, and she also wrote a book about her life.
As long as they represent us to real life situations, because that's what we're going through, real life situations, and that's why we call it life. We don't know what's going to happen next.
Right.
And I hope that, events like this will progress the movement more. This is wonderful. When they told me they were doing this, that we had a gay club in Brooklyn College.
Yeah.
You remember,
I didn't know they had
we were
this
coming
back
in.
then. No.
Well, how old is this club?
Well, the student club's been running now for more than 10 years.
That's
There's an we'll find the history eventually. There was actually a group on campus in the early 70s called Gay People at Brooklyn College that we can't figure out. They fizzled out, and they came back as something else that we don't know and fizzled out.
Oh.
And then they came back, and I'm saying 10 years, but it's probably more like 12 or more than that the LGBTA came back, and they're still going strong. The LGBTQ Center will be 5 in November.
That's wonderful.
Here, 2 floors down.
I applaud what you're doing here. I think it's needed. I think it's wonderful that you have this particular club here. There were other clubs back then. Actually, I felt uncomfortable.
If I can tell a funny story, it's not a funny story, but very specifically the gay people at Brooklyn College they advertised. See if I've got this right. Do you remember? Because I've told this once before. They advertised in the Kingsman, but they would add all of the events were off campus. They held no events on campus for fear of safety.
Of safety.
Yeah. But apparently they used to have a really, really big to-do once a year at Prospect Hall.
Yeah, at Prospect Hall.
Big deal.
Downtown.
Yeah.
Downtown here in Prospect Hall, 15th Street, something.
You can all come back in the fall. There's going to be an exhibit in the library that is going to feature Salsa Soul Sisters, which is an old Black and Latino female LGBTQ organization, but we're also going through the archives to pull out queer stuff from Brooklyn College, and that'll also be in the exhibit. And then a little plug, we also have the LGBTQ minor here at Brooklyn College, which is the only minor to this day, it's 10 years old, in all of CUNY is here at Brooklyn College. So those of you in the room who are students, or if you want to come and be a non-matriculated student, you can take classes and learn more about the queer community.
I'm glad people come into school and just be themselves and just express themselves and study and learn and share.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, yes.
Why, in your personal opinion, why do you think that schools are hesitant to incorporate LGBTQ into their curriculum?
What kind of school are you talking about?
Could
Because
you
there is an age limit that, I've always, like I said, I come from a very large family, and I have nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters that have, 5, 6, 7, 8 children. And children ask questions with the consent of the parent, whether they think it's right or not. The parent should have the last word to say, but if the children start asking questions, they should know the truth. Like sometimes my nieces would say, why you talk like that? So my sisters would lie to them, says, no, tell them the truth. Some people have heavy voices, some people have high-pitched voices. And says, then tell them the truth. If they're asking, you tell them the truth. Why do you have one blue eye and one brown eye? Because I had a cataract in my eye. I'm trying to say, when they asked about my gender, I don't know if you'll understand this, but one niece of mine came over and she asked me, was I a man or a girl? And I said,
How long ago was that?
I'm a girl here. And that's all I had to tell her. That's all I had to tell her. I'm a girl here. And she understood. She went around and made a joke about it, calling me Tío Toto. I said, listen, make her stop saying that. You know what that means, Tío Toto? A Toto, So she called me Tío Toto. I found it humorous at the same time. My sister did too, but you know, she got to speak to her. That wasn't nice. But that's what children do. They ask questions and tell them the truth. If they have that in mind, why are you going to lie to them? They have it in mind to ask questions, to teach them, and tell them the right thing. But don't lie to them, because that, you know, who knows where that may go. So, you know, sometimes I see her, I call her on the telephone, she got her own kids now, and says, who's this? I said, and she starts to laugh. I said, I'm sorry, Vicky. I said, don't be sorry, I love you. But it's a, you know, when we're among family, we crack up. We used to do things when we were kids that, you know, brothers and sisters call each other names and things like that. Like, you know, we're kids. But always tell the kids the truth. If they have the knowledge or the curiosity of asking that particular question, you have to tell them the truth. And you learn and you teach them if they don't get it. Yes?
Do you have like people who have inspired you in like acting or activism or just like any aspects?
Yes, I have somebody who, as far as activism was concerned, inspired me, and she's an alumni of this particular college, Shirley Chisholm. I said when that woman was on TV during her heydays, in the Senate, in Washington, D.C., on TV with her wigs, running for president. She was the first black woman to run for president. Yes. The first woman to run for president. She inspired me a lot during that time as well. So Shirley Chisholm's an alumni here, a teacher who didn't like what was happening and did something about it.
What do you think, how do you explain was the root of the anti-trans, sentiment, at the beginning of the movement, and how do you think the community has moved, and what do you think, if you do, what do you think has helped the community move?
I think that during that time, it was looked upon in a negative way. Like Sylvia said, she got arrested for, upper head impersonation. So it was all negative. So one of the reasons also that men would dress up as women and go robbing banks during that time. Yeah, men would get dressed up women to rob banks. They were looking for women, but they were really men. So it gave it a negative connotation. Also, let's face it, the movement didn't understand you're either gay or lesbian. But we've been here for centuries, and we're still going to be here. Different cultures looked and revered us. Native Americans did too. Egyptians, Arabics, whatever. You want a boy or girl? To the wrestlers. Or, gladiators. What do you want, a boy or girl? So they've been around. We've been around a long time. It's the acceptance. Elizabethan times. Who do you think were women? Women weren't allowed to go on stage in the Elizabethan times. So who played the part of women? Effeminate men. So there must have been very trannies there. Right? So we've always been here. It's how the culture has changed to put a negative view on us. But we have to change that around. Just like queer became something positive. And then don't forget the word transgender did not exist till 1993. So, and it's just an umbrella term, yes.
Earlier you talked about a situation with bathrooms and non-binary people, transgender people. So a lot of the bathrooms on campus are actually gender neutral, but no one knows that. So how can we put pressure on administration in the school to let people know that these bathrooms.
Put up a sign, gender neutral
They take them
bathroom.
down.
It's 1 year.
It's taken down.
Yeah, so some people rip it off, so how can we like just like
Put it
remove
back
like
up.
the signs that say
Put it back up, honey. We're here to stay. You take it down, put it back up. Oh, maybe put a fake camera on because you're being watched. Take it down, you're being watched. You know? What is it? Target. Gender neutral bathrooms.
Yes.
Men, women, gender neutral.
I worked in the high schools, and one of our high schools, we do have a gender neutral.
Neutral bathroom? Yes. Time to change it.
They're working on it, and they haven't had any problem, no altercation.
There is no problem. If you're going to go to the bathroom, do your business, you do your business. That's all that's important. You go there to do your business and your needs, and then walk out. Wash your hands. Wash your hands and walk out. What you ready?
I was going to ask you, I don't know if it's appropriate, but maybe it is.
What is, there's no stupid questions.
Okay, hormones.
Hormones.
Okay, so why, people have been on hormones for many years. I've been on hormones for 40 years, actually, probably longer. Why is it there aren't any studies on people who've been on hormones for a longer period to find out whether they should be made on hormones or discontinued? Like, there's no study on that. Why is there so little information on that? I had to go to my doctor in at Lenox Hill, who was a transgender doctor, who was telling me that I should be on hormones 1 week on, because I'm a postdoc. I should be on 1 week on and 1 week off. But a lot of trans people who've been on for years don't know,
But
what they
once
should
you
be
stop
doing.
your hormones, there's a battle there between the male and the female. So you have to keep it at a level where you feel comfortable enough.
Right. Well, I have trans girls who just stop altogether. They're not doing it anymore. Is that
And what
safe?
happens?
Because they don't want to be on hormones anymore.
Because,
They just feel they don't need it. Is that safe? I mean, we don't know the answer to that.
well, there's got to be a reason.
Yeah.
Jason.
Can you kind of explain the biodiversity between
The hormone imbalance. Well,
Yeah.
we all have male and female hormones in us. Some women, when they get their menopause or start with their menopause, there's a fight between the male and the female. They grow hairs on their faces.
Yeah.
They grow mustaches. Oh, you got my grandmother's mustache. Yeah, okay, I'm going through menopause. You understand? And men also, we have both, male and female. If we start getting hormone treatments, fine. What's his name? Warman. Dr. Warman.
Yes.
Back in the 50s. He was
50s or 70s? Oh,
no, 60s, 50s, 60s.
Oh.
On Coney Island Avenue. He was running a study on female hormones with transgender girls at that time.
Every Saturday. Rush out to Coney Island.
But we have to also think of how detrimental the hormones are when we're putting it in our bodies. Injections, if you shoot it into your bodies, will run through your blood streams, and into your liver. Patches go through the skin and not through your liver. Pills, you swallow it, have to be passed through your liver and then into the bloodstream. So some of them have detrimental side effects, especially with liver. A lot of girls became hepatitis C positive. Now there's a cure for hepatitis. Before there wasn't, so most of them died of hepatitis C.
And same for trans men as well.
Of course, you have to maintain that level, and you have to go through a doctor, endocrinologist, It's not just a hormone doctor. An endocrinologist will follow your blood work, knows what you need. Yes.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. When you're being prescribed medication, how do you feel about there having to be something to diagnose, i.e. I guess they used to call it gender dysphoria, that you have to be diagnosed with in order to get medication. Do you feel that was...
They had to give it a name.
Yeah.
The only I see is disrespect. Gender dysphoria, okay. You know, the only dis I see there with that diagnosis is disrespect. You understand? But they had to give it a name in the medical field, and they called it gender dysphoria.
Is that something that still exists now?
Yes, it does exist. In order to get your treatment and things like that, they have to put it down. Those little men in their happy white coats, just put it down. and call it gender dysphoria. The only dis I see there is disrespect. Homosexual, you couldn't, homosexual was a mental disease. Like then, you were deviant. You weren't able to have liquor. You got arrested if you gave one a homosexual liquor or lesbian. You understand what's changed? They're still lesbian, they're still homosexuals. So the only dysphoria I see is disrespect. It's been taken out of those scientific books. Any happy comments? Yes.
Do you know of a resource where one could find translations on how to have conversations with Spanish speakers about transgender people? So I have an issue with, I have like a language barrier with my mom about talking about people who are transgender. So I like.
Where's she from?
We're Mexican.
Where?
Mexican.
Transgénero.
Yeah, but then there's also like these other factors that come in. So like, I want to find a resource that she can read or I can read with her to like have these conversations.
A lot of pamphlets are out there in Spanish and English. And different agencies give out Spanish and English pamphlets that you can show to her and educate her. Where do you go to? Sage has pamphlets in Spanish and English.
Yes, they do.
The Gay Lesbian Center has pamphlets in Spanish and English. What's that? Trans Latinas?
Oh yes, on 19th
Trans
Street.
Latinas on 19th Street and 8th Avenue. They have pamphlets in Spanish and English because they cater mostly to the Latina community.
Yes.
So there are resources, you just have to look for them. And it's good that you can have a conversation like that with your mother.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
As a matter of fact, Trans Latina has meetings every last Friday of the month on 19th Street with trans men and trans women. Starts at 6 o'clock.
So there are resources that we can go and educate our parents.
And just to add, PFLAG also
PFLAG,
has
yes.
materials that are also translating Spanish, and GLSEN, which is the gay, GLBT, but originally gay, lesbian, straight educational network, has also a lot of materials in various languages and certainly also.
And also the Anti-Violence Project have pamphlets on anything. Police misconduct, sexual assault, domestic violence, transgender violence. You know, a lot of these agencies have translations in their services, in their pamphlets. There's some who are also Asians, you know, Abidjan. They have translations in their cards, in their pamphlets. So that's one way of, you know, educating her. Bring it, just leave it on the table. Take a look at it. Where'd this come from? I don't know. No, but it's good that, you know, she's asking questions. Yeah. It's always good to be open.
When did the police stop arresting trans people for dressing in drag? Do you know what year that
After the Stonewall Riots.
Exactly. Right after the
Right after the first Pride parade, you know.
1970?
Yeah, they stop arresting unless you're out there prostituting.
Oh.
Don't look at you. I'm not looking at you. They did not that. It's sex survival.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's true.
What?
1970.
Then what do you think?
I thought it was 70, a little later than that.
Why? Marsha stopped getting arrested.
Oh, she did? Oh,
unless she was prostituting.
Oh, okay.
That's why I call it Marsha Parks Survival Movement, because she didn't care.
She paid no mind.
She paid it no mind. I mean, I'm dressing the way I want to be dressed. Any more questions? Yes.
What are some of the survival tactics that you use to survive as a trans woman in New York City at the time, back in the days?
Though back in the days, I really didn't have any problems unless I opened up my big mouth. Because I wasn't readable, I blend in, unless I dress outlandish or put too much makeup on. And don't forget, it was the 60s and 70s, lashes on top, lashes on bottom, lots of wigs, lots of false hair pieces, Fashion was dictating what was norm. But I never had any problems unless I opened up my big mouth.
How do you survive? Job-wise,
Job-wise was that's one thing that I always look up to Christine Quinn, because when I needed a job, she gave me one. She offered me a job. And with that job, I pulled myself up my bootstrap, and I was at my lowest. I was contemplating suicide, because I was at my lowest. Coming out of a crack addiction, no money, everything was what I had saved, went on crack. I'm going on public assistance, then being sexually assaulted not once but twice by women. And then I saw the support they gave me, and I wanted to give back, so I volunteered giving back. They saw the work I could do. And they hired me. They gave me a job, and I pulled up my bootstraps. I help myself, I help my family, and I'm helping the community. And like I said, I made a promise to my sister that I would try to keep the community together. Thank you.
I think that might be a good note to end on. Before we end, I want to make a couple of points. One is we have been recording for posterity, and there's going to be a whole multimedia thing going up on the website. If you do not want to be included in the recording, please see Saklima, who's over there on your way out. We do have this little commemorative booklet, which has a lovely photo of Victoria Cruz inside. It also has resources. There was a question about what do you tell a young person who's in trouble or who's in a dangerous situation? There are resources on campus. They're listed in this booklet. And of course, we're in New York City. There are also many resources off campus. And there are people in this room who can help guide you towards some of those resources if you or a friend needs them. So if you can please join me. We have one of our elders here living. We don't have to honor her after she's gone. She's here. And so please help me thank both María del Scharrón and Victoria Cruz for this evening.